Eating a special diet can be so helpful with managing autoimmune symptoms. But as I was watching videos on diets and recipes and meal prepping, something I realized is no one was talking about the mental health effects. And sometimes I'd even mention people saying that it's easy, which maybe for some people it is, but it can be really challenging to eat an elimination diet and completely change how you're eating, especially when you're so sick and so low on energy. Even with my naturopath, I would be emailing her about what's going on, and she would say how important it is to stick to the diet, even though I was telling her that I was struggling to stick to it. And I was struggling because I didn't have enough energy to learn new recipes, make them, and then clean up after. And then after all that, I still wouldn't have enough food, and I would go to sleep hungry, even though the meals were filling as I ate them. And this is because whole foods are less calorically dense. And so if you're used to eating more processed foods, or eating like pasta and bread and things that are just more dense than visually what you're used to seeing as a full meal, when you eat whole foods, it's going to be, not always, but a lot of times it's going to be more volume. And so learning how to eat this way is an adjustment to learn what the new expectations are for figuring out how much you actually need to eat. I also eat paleo, so also figuring out how to eat enough, or I eat paleo currently. Figuring out how to eat enough without eating grains is a learning curve in itself. So because I wasn't eating enough and I couldn't figure out how to make sure I was eating enough, so then you gotta factor in meal tracking, like calorie tracking, because now I gotta figure out how to make sure I am eating enough, all whilst I don't have any energy and I don't feel good. I'm saying all this because if you've tried this, you can probably relate to what I'm talking about, but I'm just trying to paint the picture of the reality of trying to change your diet for your health. Before I go on though, I do want to emphasize that I'm not saying it's not worth it to change your diet. I absolutely believe that it is worth it, especially if it ends up helping your symptoms, even though it can take a while for you to, some people it can take a while to actually figure out what works and what doesn't so that you can ease your symptoms. But it is worth it. I just know that we can't brush off the struggles and push them under the carpet, and talking about it helps us not feel so alone and be able to come up with solutions together. If you're trying to figure out a diet for your illness, I just don't want you to go online and see all these people who have it, down to a science and their routine all figured out on how to make sure they always have meals prepped, when in reality it took a lot of trial and error and failures to get to that point, to be at a point where they always have easy meals ready in the freezer for a hard night and things like that. Like, it takes time. So back to what I'm saying. So I'm spending energy I don't have. I'm overwhelmed. I'm under eating and hungry, which is all completely unsustainable. Then this guilt has me feeling like a failure, like I'm failing and feeling hopeless. And this is a huge impact when you don't have support and community to help you, which a lot of people don't. So now the situation is highlighting the feeling of being alone. I'm sure you're starting to see how a variety of emotions can stem from these kind of diet changes, which brings me into realizing that the mental effects with dieting for your illness can have some similarities with eating disorders, and that it's important to learn how to navigate this carefully. I mean, an obvious connection could be developing orthorexia, which is when I don't want to like explain it improperly, so I'll put it on the screen what orthorexia is, but essentially it's almost like an obsession of trying to eat as healthy as possible, which obviously when you're experiencing pain after meals, if you're experiencing increased inflammation, it's easy to kind of go down the path of trying to eat as clean as possible to get rid of the pain. Like, it's very reasonable. But that's not the only thing that I'm referring to. In general, I just think there's connections. Essentially, this idea of good and bad foods, having guilt after eating things, thinking about food all the time and the mental effect that has on you, struggling to eat enough. There's a lot of similarities, and so it can have a really, really heavy mental effect, and depending on how long you go through it, it could be something that can take a really long time to unravel and work through as well. And the first time I realized how much of a mental impact this all can have, I was in this shower, where I process my emotions. I know I can't be the only one. And I thought to myself how I just wish I couldn't be, I wish that I wouldn't be hungry so that I wouldn't need to eat. And then just the thought of eating became so stressful. And this was largely due to the fact that I was putting in so much energy trying to cook food, energy that I didn't have, and then still being really hungry. So I'm expending more energy. I'm also getting less energy in. And I would constantly end up in a situation where I would have to eat something that wasn't a part of the diet, right? Like, I would have to eat some ramen. Like, we have ramen in the house all the time. Or I'd have to eat pasta or bread, something that I knew gives me inflammation, but I was out of food options. Like, I didn't have enough food, or like I already cooked so much that day, I couldn't cook more. I stopped trying to follow a diet. For me, it's Paleo, but I stopped just trying to follow a certain diet for a couple months, and I recently started again because I was able to manage by taking ibuprofen here and there, which I know for a lot of people, like, just being able to take ibuprofen a couple times a week is actually a really good place to be at. But I mentioned in another video, but at this time, I'm pretty sure I have pericarditis. It hasn't been diagnosed yet. Inflammation around the outer part of your heart. And so that's what would flare up for me. And so it was really serious when it would. It wasn't something that I could just kind of push through. And so I would take ibuprofen, but now that I'm pregnant, I can't take ibuprofen. So it's left me with no option. No other option other than diet. So I had to figure out the diet. And also I've increased my thyroid medication, so I have a little bit more energy. My energy's doing better, but obviously if I have pericarditis, any issue that you're having in your body is gonna cause fatigue. Like, fatigue is gonna be the symptom of any ailment, because your body's gonna be working on fixing that, which is gonna make you not have energy for outwardly things. But so when I recently tried to pick up this diet again, which I'm currently still doing it, it's going well at this moment, but I'll talk about that in another video. But I think I've only really gotten through it because I've had no other choice. But recently, when I was figuring out, I'm like, I'm gonna figure this out. I loosely tracked what I ate for the day. Like, I didn't use my fitness pal or anything, but I weighed what I ate and looked it up online. Like, oh, I ate this many grams of beef and this many grams of cabbage or whatever, and I kept track of it. And I had beef and salmon that day, and at the end of the day, I'd only eaten about 1,000 calories. I'd eaten 3 meals and a snack, and my lunch was like a salmon and cauliflower rice bowl, and it was really good. And it probably was a little bit more because I did have like spicy mayo in it. Not that much, but that was roughly 300 calories, and I was struggling to finish it that day. Like, the volume was a full portion and I felt full, but I knew it was only 300 calories. I'm like, I can't not eat all this. Like, I have to eat it all because I'm not gonna eat enough. So anyway, at the end of the day, I'd only eaten 1,000 calories, and I was like, no wonder this has been so hard. Because even if I was eating 1,400 or 1,500 calories in a day, that's still nowhere near enough, and is definitely going to leave me feeling really hungry. I personally have only ever tracked calories in times where I was trying to eat enough. I've never used calories as I can't go above a certain point. No shame or judgment whatsoever for anyone who has done that, but I just want to share that as a perspective of a way to use calories as a tool. If you don't already have some bad associations with tracking calories, that it's meant to be a tool to make sure you eat enough, and to not restrict yourself. But I know that needing, in this kind of situation, needing to track calories and macros can be really triggering for some people, if they've struggled with restrictive eating in the past. So I can only imagine going into something like this, needing to eat an elimination diet. Like, if someone has experienced restrictive eating or an eating disorder of any kind, then it's always gonna be something, it can always be something that they have to work through. And so working through that and working really hard to be like, there's no bad foods and I'm worth eating this, and I don't need to feel guilt after eating this, to then having an illness, whether you had it before, like for a while, or it's new, but having this illness and learning that eating a certain way will help, and then struggling to eat enough and be in a situation where you have to track what you're eating, that's just adding on another level of mental difficulty and emotional stress, which too much stress can increase symptoms. Now, with that said, I do want to say that some levels of stress are okay, and it's inevitable. We're always going to experience stress. And when we talk about stress and autoimmune conditions, I'm trying really hard not to sound out of breath, but with the chest issue I have, it's kind of hard not to, so I'm sorry, bear with me. What was I saying? When it comes to stress, it's important to note that it's usually chronic stress. So if you're chronically stressed over the same things, hamster wheeling, that learning coping mechanisms to work through that stress, address that stress, and not suppress the stress is really important for managing illness for everyone, because stress can even be linked to causing health issues, and it's kind of a whole other conversation, but so I don't want what I just said to be like a be afraid of stress, like, oh no, I'm stressed, and then get stressed because you're stressed. Because no, it's like it's okay to be stressed sometimes. You just want to learn coping mechanisms, which I'm still working on that. Definitely still working on that myself. So with all that said, diet in general, especially eating an elimination diet, can have some large impact on your mental health. And that isn't to make it scary. It's just something to be aware of and to work on alongside of your diet, and to be aware of your emotions and coming up with strategies to cope with it. One thing that has helped me with coping with the emotional stress that comes with all this is trying to rewrite the narrative of I can't eat these things and I have to eat a restrictive diet, which I don't ever tell myself I'm eating a restrictive diet. I like to say I'm eating a specific diet rather than like restrictive or even elimination. Sometimes I'll use elimination in situations where it makes sense, because elimination means you're eliminating foods, but you will add things back in later. But I change it from I can't eat these things and I'm eating a restrictive diet to eating this way helps me have control over my own health and it helps me feel better. That I actually have the option to be able to help myself feel better, because there are conditions and diseases out there where diet isn't going to do anything, where people are struggling no matter what they do, and a diet isn't going to make a difference. And that's not to downplay the struggles that you do go through. I want to make that very clear. But if eating a certain way truly helps you, it's a bigger gain than anything that you're losing, right? Being able to live a high quality of life and do the things you love to do and spend it with the people you love is worth the extra effort into eating a better diet or eating a specific diet. Because I'm not even going to say it's better, it's just specific. And not only that, if it's any consolation, overall with eating this way, it's probably been about a week or two only for me, but I feel better. I feel happier, like just in general when I sit in my body. I don't feel this every cell in my body is upset kind of feeling, and my gut health is doing much better, so my digestion is doing really, really well. And sometimes it can take longer than how long it's taken me, but I was already eating pretty clean, so it wasn't as big of a change for me at this point. And I'm sure I could mention even more strategies, but I really wanted to highlight this because it's not something that is just easy. And if it's easy for you, I'm happy for you. But if you're someone who's trying to do this and struggling, you tried to do it and walked away from it because it was challenging, or you're apprehensive about starting because it's so overwhelming, I wanted to share this for you and to know that it's normal to feel this way, and that if you do decide to commit to trying a specific diet, that there are other people out here who can talk to you and who are going through what you're going through. And I truly hope that if you do, it works and you start feeling better, because you deserve to feel better You do not deserve any of the pain that you've been feeling. And you deserve to enjoy what you eat and to enjoy how your body feels again. Thank you for listening. I love to hear your experiences and any tips with managing your emotions in this kind of situation if you've gone through it before in the comments. And I'll see you next time.